So it's my pleasure to introduce the next disruptive dialogue. It's going to be on innovation in full food utilization with an aim to get to 0% waste in the food value chain. We've heard a lot about potential trends getting to disruption in that value chain. So I think this is a very exciting culmination, if you will, to some of the content we've had here at the showcase, with the aim being that we're not going to have a value chain, we're going to have a value circle, and waste becomes inputs. So it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, who is Stephanie Potter, and she'll introduce the panel. Stephanie is the VP for the Sustainable Business Development Practice at Rabobank North America, and we're delighted to have Stephanie.
Thanks. Okay, everyone can hear me somehow? Great, so I've just been asked to give a bit of a high-level overview of the food waste issue, which is what we'll discuss when the panelists come up on the stage today, and to give a little bit on Rabobank's position on this issue and more broadly. So some of the stats that I'll reference are attributable to the 2016 ReFed report, which ReFed being a collaboration of over 30 public and private stakeholders that have made commitments toward food waste reduction steps. And ReFed's put through a roadmap together that would look at 20% reductions annually, moving toward a 50% reduction by 2030, which is calculated at about $100 billion economic value. So there's some serious steps to be made in the meantime, which we'll discuss. But just to give you a sense, I mean, and I think most people are probably very familiar with this issue. I mean, it's an issue across multiple dimensions. So we're looking at it from a food access problem. 40% of all grown food is being wasted, and at the same time, we've got 1 out of every individual food insecure globally. As an economic problem, we spend about $218 billion in the U.S. every year on food that's never eaten. And as an environmental problem, it's putting tremendous strain on our resources, and we've got 52 million tons being sent to landfills every year. And it's happening along the value chain, so it's happening at the production level. It's about 16% of the wasted food per year is wasted at the production level, which is about, in terms of waste, 10 million tons. At the distribution level, it's closer to 2%, which still is about 1 million tons of wasted food from kind of post-farm gate. And then at the consumer facing businesses and homes front, that's the bulk of the waste, which is over 80%, or on average, if you think about it, per American per year, looking at about 400 pounds of food waste. So clearly, this is something that needs to be addressed. Companies are starting to look at this problem, and they're looking at it, of course, as much from an increasing income perspective as a reducing food waste. But many companies are stepping up to make commitments, multi-year commitments that will decrease their own footprints as part of this larger agenda toward zero waste. Sodexo, to take one example, has had a program in place on campuses since 2010, starting with 8 universities having a food waste reduction initiative in place, and now it's really integrated into their Better Tomorrow plan, which is across all geographies and constituents that they serve. So there's a lot being done. There's a lot more to do. Rabobank, as a leading food and agribusiness financer, is looking at this as a core part of our strategy. We see it as our responsibility, and also that we're in a position to really tackle some of the larger sustainability issues facing our large corporate clients, food waste being primary among them and cutting across all of the sectors that we serve. So we are trying to think about what we can do to promote food access, security, and safety, to support balanced nutrition and stable supply chains. And we're doing this as part of what we call a banking for food strategy, which is really core to all of the work that we do. And banking for food, as we're sort of now calling it, has basically 3 components. How we're leveraging our networks through our platforms, our partnerships, our initiatives and affiliations that we have, this convening being one of those, how we leverage those, how we leverage our knowledge through our food and agri research team, which is kind of comprised of over 80 analysts across more than 20 offices worldwide, where we're really producing research on some of these issues. and through our financing. So one example that's a Netherlands-based example that we recently did was financing a food waste factory for a catering company that we work with, who really wanted to look at how they kind of reduce their own footprint. So they had a factory built where they convert all of the food collected from their hospitals and universities and catering sites, and they're reconverting that to soups and sauces that they then sell in grocery stores. And they're getting into a situation now where they're having increase of or overflow of supply, because a lot of the restaurants and the grocery stores are bringing their food to this factory to be dealt with. So interesting examples on the financing front as well. And we're also looking at innovation and what early stage companies are doing, and that's what we'll spend time on today. So we're really excited to be here to be able to sort of hear from all of the early stage thinking, and we've been for years partnering with VC firms that directly invest in some of these companies. So without further ado, I'll turn to who we've got on the panel today, and I will just briefly mention the perspectives that they hold, but I'll have them kind of start by giving a little deeper overview of what their innovations actually look like. So maybe I'll just call everyone up to the stage to join me now, and we can get going. So just while they're getting up, we've got Christine Mosley, CEO and founder of Full Harvest, which represents the voice of an entrepreneur looking at how to combat on-farm waste by connecting through a B2B platform large farms with food companies. And we've got Dan Morash, founder of California Safe Soil, which is looking at converting food waste that would otherwise be going to landfills to a viable crop nutrient product, soil nutrient product, sorry. Joni Taylor, Director of Consumer Affairs and Community Relations for local Schnuck Markets, who has a process of donating excess food inventory to local food banks through an umbrella organization. And then finally, Michael Dean, who is co-founder and CIO of AgFunder, which is an online investment marketplace specifically focusing on food and agriculture. So we'll hear from them a little bit more now, and I will join you. Let me grab it. So maybe we'll just, Christine, start with you to give us a little bit more of a picture of what you kind of went through to get where you are today with Full Harvest.
Sure. So Christine Mosley, based in San Francisco. Full Harvest, we're solving the food waste problem at the farm level. We are the first institutional B2B platform connecting large farms to food and beverage companies to sell their surplus and imperfect produce. And as she mentioned, there's 20,000 billion pounds of produce that goes to waste every single year just because it's not perfectly shaped. My experience is 12 years in logistics and food industries where I saw the food system issue firsthand, and I loved what we were doing at a high-growth healthy food startup I was working at in terms of healthy products, but we were selling $13 green juices, and it was because we were paying top dollar for perfect-looking produce to then immediately process it. And so I knew there had to be a better way, and that's when I found out about this massive food waste issue. And when I looked around trying to find somebody that was actually solving this problem of aggregating this edible imperfect produce to these food and beverage companies, there was nobody, which was shocking to me. So that's where Full Harvest came about. We've already sold over 200,000 pounds of produce that would have previously gone to waste, which equates to more than 7 million gallons of water that was used to grow that, which blows my mind. We've launched with some national brands, and we're scaling right now, closing our fundraising round. But I think at the end of the day, what's great is it's really a win-win across the value chain. It's bringing additional revenue to farms that previously, are looking for additional revenue streams. We're reducing food waste, and then we're bringing significant savings to our food and beverage companies that are, trying to create more affordable, healthy products and reduce their production costs. So, yeah.
Great. Dan, maybe turning over to you, just in terms of your sort of approach of recycling what would otherwise be food waste, can you talk a little bit about California Safe Soil?
Sure. I have an energy and infrastructure finance background, and there was clearly a problem with the beneficial reuse of waste and food waste. And so we presented here in 2013 with a new technology. We built a pilot plant in West Sacramento. We're going to be near UC Davis, which is where we do a lot of our research. So you've heard about that before. And also about the specialty crop growers and the Western growers who are working with us doing field trials. And we built a commercial scale plant. We've got a lot of progress that we're.
Sammy, can you turn off your phones? I think it's picked up there. Anyone has phone on.
I have one on only for time purposes, so will someone just start signaling when it's time to stop? Okay. Oh, thank you. It's off. Still happening.
Okay, back to food waste recycling. Anyway, and this is, I got so excited about this technology because it's so simple, and it's something that basically evolved in nature, and all of our lives depend on it. And that is what we do to convert food into nutrients. We digest it with enzymes in our stomach. So you take long-chain food molecules, proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, and you use enzymes to cut them up into small building block molecules, amino acids, fatty acids, and simple sugars. Well, we're doing the same thing, and we're doing it in a plant, and we're doing it with 500 pounds of food a day that a supermarket, of inedible food that the supermarket throws away. We do everything we can to keep it from going putrescent. We need a high quality feedstock. But then we run it through a digester, add enzymes, we go through several grinding steps. It becomes a liquid that can go through the drip lines at the farm and take all of those building blocks and basically grow life in the soil. And the plants respond to that. Based on our research, the plants respond by growing more roots, more flowering, fruiting. Basically every living organism, when times are good, well, it's time to reproduce. When times are bad, it's time to go into self-preservation mode. And if you get more organic matter into the soil, that makes times good for plants, whether it's permanent crops or annual crops. We've seen this in our results. And so not only are you avoiding throwing away all this food, and we can attack probably half of that food waste pie that we have talked about, and beneficially reuse it to grow the next crop. And so that's what we're doing. There are a lot of people, there are a lot of different technologies that people are focusing on now. Ours is one of them. You can see divisions of the marketplace and people attacking this problem, and this is our solution.
Joni, turning to the perspective of a food retailer, could you talk a little bit about Schnucks' strategy for donating excess food inventory?
Okay. Welcome to St. Louis. This is my hometown.
And can you please welcome us as the only local, I think, on the panel?
Welcome to St. Louis. And Schnucks is a family-owned supermarket. We're headquartered in St. Louis, but we operate 99 stores throughout 6 states. The major concentration of our stores is here in the St. Louis area. And the overall philosophy of our company is to nourish lives, obviously through the sale of food through our supermarkets, but also in the way we handle what we cannot sell. And we actually handle, we have 2 different kinds of waste at the retail level. And also, this would include our distribution centers. One being the food that we cannot sell, but is still wholesome and edible. And the other is food that is simply not fit for human consumption. We also have the philosophy that the shelf life belongs to the customer. So what we're dealing with is we have very high quality food available that we may not be able to sell, but is still exceptionally high quality. So we partner with an outstanding food hunger relief organization here in St. Louis. They're also local. And they partner up with all of our stores, and there are approximately 70 stores in the greater St. Louis metropolitan area that we partner with Operation Food Search. We take out the middleman by assigning, we have over 300 food donation pickups a week. And the kind of food we're talking about with these food donation pickups are perishable. It would include produce, bakery, deli, prepared foods, dairy, and probably one of the most sought after and the highest quality would be the protein in our meat department. And so these pantries go directly to our stores to get whatever food they can to go on our neighbors in need, on their plates at night. And it's a way for us to give back to the community but also handle a major portion of what otherwise would be food waste for us.
Michael, I'm going to ask you to segue us to sort of a discussion more on the financing and policy side of this. So could you maybe give us an overview of the landscape of the investment in food waste reduction initiatives in the U.S. today?
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm Michael Dean, co-founder at AgFunder. We're an online investment platform for innovation in food and agriculture technology. We've been tracking, as you're probably aware, we publish a industry report twice a year. We've been tracking investment into the food waste sector, and it doesn't make very pretty reading, really, when you think about the scale of the problem. Last year there was a little over $91 million invested, which is a startlingly low amount across 19 deals. And the picture's worse this year. I think our mid-year report, we reported 29 million invested. And so we're seeing about a third decline on last year's figures. So setting the scene, it's not positive, but I think it's early days. I think we need to be educating people. A lot of investors, it's just not on their radar at the moment, and I think that's going to change over time. But just at the moment, I think a lot of people just aren't aware of the scale of the problem.
Yeah, and Christine and Dan, being in the weeds on sort of the capital raising side, what has been your experience in terms of how to get at this?
Yeah, so it's been interesting. I think, as you mentioned, people are just now starting to realize what a massive opportunity it is and problem. And so, what's been great is in the last few months, people are becoming more and more aware of it. But, it has been difficult finding people that really understand the problem and, are able to bring that sort of expertise, because there's not a lot of us, which is a huge opportunity, which means, we're one of the few people really understanding this problem extremely well before others. But I think as Sanjeev alluded to yesterday, I think there's a big opportunity on the seed investment side of sort of this middle ground on the supply chain. There's not a ton of seed investment done sort of on this middle value chain part. It's either very ag tech focused or very consumer brand focused, and I think it's a big white space right now in investing. And so, we've had a lot of interest, and now, we're closing around, but I think, it's been challenging finding the right fit of people that really are aligned with our mission and values, but also can bring value to what we're doing.
I in the course of my finance career in energy and infrastructure, arranged over $20 billion of financing, and the total of $15 million that we have raised for California Safe Soil far and away has been the most difficult and challenging funding exercise. So, I guess I going in didn't realize how hard it was going to be or how long it was going to take. But in any case, I'm not discouraged by that. I think only now the real attention is focused on this food waste issue, which is really embarrassing to all of us as Americans to see that 40% of the food in this country that's produced is wasted. And we sit around and talk about the challenge of how are we going to feed 9 billion people. Well, we could start by wasting less food and not having to produce, one additional pound. So I think that is a pretty simple message, and that resonates with people, and that as we move forward, funding is going to be available.
Michael, any comments, any reactions to that? I mean, I don't know, where do public attitudes and sort of consumer behavior play a role in some of the investing that's going on?
Sorry.
I'm kind of asking Michael to react, and then I'll
right.
open it
Well,
up.
when we were in a campaign for California Safe Soils last year, and we did receive a lot of interest. The hits on the AgFunder News report and the hits on the site were very, very encouraging, and we thought this is going to be a slam dunk because it's such a big issue, a big opportunity. And we had a lot of calls, a lot of inquiries, people wanting to find out about California Safe Soil. Mm-hmm. We offered to introduce people to Dan, and a lot of people said no, a lot of people said yes, and we did that. But I think there's just a real feeling out in the investment community that this is a new problem on the horizon. There's a lot of different areas in ag tech, a lot of problems to solve, and a lot of opportunities. And I just think it's too new, and people just haven't turned their attention to it at the moment. I think that's something that's going to happen. It's happening already, as Christine is finding out. You know, there's the reception for Christine and companies like Imperfect Produce, which seem to be doing very, very well. So I think that the wheel's turning slowly, but it has been slow.
I will turn it to you, Joni, on sort of the policy side. So how have policies played a role in this in terms of food labeling, tax incentives? What has been your experience on sort of what makes it more difficult or less difficult to get food sort of reallocated?
Well, fortunately, we don't have to deal with a lot of disincentives on, from the legal side of things, because the Good Samaritan Act has given us the opportunity to, as long as we operate in good faith, and food safety is extremely important in our company and also to our food pantry partners to certify themselves to handle food safely. So, that opens up, that frees us to really come up with ways to put that food that is edible on the plate. I would say that just in St. Louis, I know Operation Food Search feeds about 150,000 people a month. And so we're looking at our food donations are at about 1 million pounds a month. About 1 in 3 meals that's served comes from our supermarkets. So obviously, as a business, we're looking to see, well, what can we do from a business side to reduce our waste? Obviously, whatever is possible to donate, we want to do that. But really, our goal is to be profitable and efficient as well. And I will tell you that from the consumer side, it is an issue that is gaining awareness. At the retail level nationally, the Food Market Institute is looking at this. There will be public education campaigns about food waste. And I think one of our core customers, which is the millennial, cares deeply about things like that. And so I think we're going to see a much higher consumer awareness, and it's going to be interesting how it impacts the availability of the food that we do donate.
And will higher consumer awareness impact, your sort of trajectories in any way? And what might that look like for maybe first Dan and then Christine to comment?
The Golden One Center is the new home of the Sacramento Kings in downtown Sacramento. It's opening up this fall. We have a program where we're going to take all of their inedible food waste, and all their edible food waste will be distributed to food banks in the greater Sacramento area. So it's a very similar solution to the one that you've come up with, and I think again echoes. I thought that the awareness of this problem is something that is pulling solutions out of the woodwork, and there are leaders such as yourself who are showing the way, and there will be many others, I think, who follow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen it. I've gotten a lot of job applications from millennials because they're so passionate about this problem, and I think it's just going to get greater, and they're really wanting healthier, more sustainable products, and that industry is growing at a large rate, and so it's very important and will become more and more important. What's great is that our buyers love us and want to do business with us for a long time, just because they really want that brand story and to differentiate and be the first movers doing some of this stuff. And I wasn't sure that some of my buyers would want to be broadcasting this, but now they're actually begging me, to be able to promote us and talk about it, because it is so important. And I think it's just going to get more important, as you said, with policy, because there, may be food waste laws coming into place soon. And I know my buyers as well, have sustainability KPIs that they're trying to meet. And I think, it'll just get more and more of a larger issue to tackle. So.
And is this going in the right direction? I mean, this all sounds very positive, but Michael referenced being a bit of a bleak picture. I mean, what are some of the barriers, or what are some of the major roadblocks to kind of all these commitments and this increased consumer interest? Are there any downsides or negative sides of that?
Well, I think it's deal numbers. There's not that many deals out there, to be frank. There's a handful of companies that are doing something and are making a noise about it. I think there's more technology on the horizon and more opportunities on the horizon. But just at the moment, I think there's a lack of deal flow, a lack of understanding, and a lack of attention by the investor community. We've also got that investment gap that we're seeing across the board between seed and Series A. even beyond that. So I think things are going to change. We've got a whole rash of new accelerators coming out, and so we're going to be, providing that platform for these technologies to develop and get to a stage where they're going to be investment ready. But just at the moment, I think we just lack the opportunities to invest in.
So switching gears for a little bit to sort of which players are doing the most. We've talked a little bit about investors and grocers and retailers, consumers. Who of these sort of stakeholder groups that touch this issue, and we can just take it in turn, whoever wants, who is the most proactive, who's been the most helpful in sort of paving the way, and who needs to step up and do more, and what might that look like? What needs to happen? Softball. Grab it as you have an answer.
Well, what I spend most of my day doing is I'm the consumer advocate. I'll tell you that it's typical for everyone to look at what somebody else is either not doing, instead of looking at what we're doing. And so in terms of being innovative, this direct store pickup program is nothing new that we've innovated. It's actually been around for about 25 years, and I've been in my role. What's changed, though, is expanding to departments other than what you would typically expect, which is bread. And they have way more bread than they can use, more into better sources of protein like meat. And I think our customers expect us, to be responsible to the community, but also to being an efficient operator. And so I think our consumers will be looking to themselves to do more. I think that they are honest enough to say, once it's brought to their attention, what more can I do, is going to be a question that they will ask themselves. And that will impact, hopefully, the way they buy groceries, and certainly the way they prepare and store the food at home. And I know there's a lot of innovation coming up that will help the consumer to better utilize their food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I would say we've had great support from supermarkets. So Save Mart is in our area. They have 211 stores. They signed a 10-year contract with us, committing to supply us with whatever food they could not sell or donate. And on the other side, we've had different growers who have been first movers in terms of running field trials. They've gotten great results. We've gotten some investment from growers and a lot of good feedback from growers, and food processors. Food processing waste is another huge area. That lettuce that you buy in a bag, there's a 20% cull rate associated with putting the lettuce in that bag. So that adds up to 180,000 tons a year in Salinas Valley, and that's something else that where we're working to come up with a solution for that. So really, all the stakeholders are responding, and as is the case with any innovation, there's always first movers. There's always people who want to be second. And in fact, in agriculture, I think there's a lot of growers who are actually very innovative. They just want somebody else to be the first one to do it, so they can be the second one to do it. There's movement. It just takes time, and it requires more patience than is required for a software platform application.
Sorry, you go.
No, I was just going to say I've seen buy-in as well on both sides. The stakeholders, as I mentioned, the food companies are extremely excited about it, and they've been very supportive, and then the farms as well. We're doing something that I think some people didn't think was possible, which is we're actually helping growers change the way that they harvest and aggregate some of this produce that up to 50% currently gets left on the field and then churned back under. And we're actually getting growers to change the way that they harvest based on the demand on our platform, which is really exciting. So there's a huge opportunity here to really unleash up to 50% additional supply, especially on the organic side where we're struggling with supply. And so I think, that's what I've been excited about, is that there has been a lot of support. So, yeah.
I was just going to say, I think there's a general disconnect in the community between, about food and where it comes from and where it goes. Our mission at AgFunder is to try to get everybody to be investing in agriculture technology. The day where I get an LA hipster invest in California Safe Soils, I'll be happy. But just at the moment, it's all about, you know, investing in apps that'll order you a pizza or something like that. So we've got to make ag tech as sexy as we can and try and build that crowd so that we've got a lot of people who are interested in where their food's coming from, and if they don't eat it, where it's going.
Yeah, so you actually kind of alluded to this. Oh, did you have a comment, Jenny?
No,
Yeah.
that,
Or
I
Dan.
totally, more and more customers are curious about where their food comes from, and they are taking responsibility for where it's going. So I see that.
Yeah, it's getting there.
And I was just going to add that, look, this is an infrastructure problem. It's about moving tons. And yes, there are software platforms that are part of the solution, but really this is logistics and moving tons and figuring out ways to get food into a beneficial use when you're working against the clock.
My only comment was going to be that you've started to paint a picture about where you want AgFunder to sort of be. You're all first movers in your own right in this space. What do you see 10 years down the line for these initiatives? So maybe starting with AgFunder, you just continuing along that thought.
Well, for the food,
What do you want?
food in general, or?
AgFunder specifically.
Oh, AgFunder.
Yeah, what
Oh,
do you
right,
want to happen
yes.
with AgFunder?
Well, we want to be helping to fund not only ag tech, but ag farming projects, ag lands. We really want to sort of really broaden our approach and be funding everything from food all the way through to production opportunities. So we just see so much opportunity in this market, so much work to be done, so many problems to solve. But we think, you know, if you look at the conferences that were held 3 years ago even, and the amount of change that's occurred since then, the number of people that are coming, the VCs that are looking at agriculture now in a meaningful way, things are moving in the right direction. We just need to try and speed that up a little bit.
Joni, on sort of the donation, the excess food, and your programming that you're supporting at Schnucks, where do you want that to be? What impact do you want to have achieved in 5, 10 years, let's say?
Well, that's a difficult question for me because obviously I wear both the hats of the community and the company. For us, obviously, to get to zero waste, I think there will always be that opportunity to donate. I think getting it completely through our culture in our company that, you know, that the hierarchy is to sell, donate, and then compost or, you know, turn what is not edible so that we are zero waste.
Yeah.
Dan and then Christine, yeah, well, you set yourselves on this path. Where do you hope to end?
We think there should be a commercial scale enzymatic digester in every major city in the country. We think it's licensable to go abroad as well. And that with that infrastructure in place, that could certainly reduce this organic waste stream by half in that period of time.
Our company is called Full Harvest because our vision is that 100% of all edible food that's grown gets used in some way, shape, or form for consumption, and that's our vision. You know, and it's crazy that there's basically a number 2 market for most every industry in the world, except there's not one yet really for food, and that's what we're creating. And I think, you know, it's a massive market. It's at least $9 billion of produce that's edible that could be sold, and globally, that's in the U.S., and globally at least $80 billion. So our goal is to help capture that market. So, yeah.
I'm going to ask the audience to ask questions of you. Before I do that, are there any requests of the audience? And you've got a kind of captive group here. What would you say your sort of ask would be in terms of action for these guys? And then tee up questions, because we'll have a little time at the end after this for any questions you all have for these guys. And it doesn't have to be everyone, but if there is anything sort of top of mind. No? Very happy to.
Well, we love to do more research to prove different applications of enzymatic digestion. So, you know, there are a number of universities that are represented here. The big crop science companies are represented here and are doing a lot of work on beneficial microbial studies. So, you know, the science of what we do is is of critical importance, and that's one of the reasons we came here in the first place in 2013 because of the people with those backgrounds who are here.
Questions from anyone from the audience? Yeah, we'll start with you. None?
Okay, so you guys are addressing the food waste issue. What about the food loss issue that happens from post-harvest through the value chain? That's not the same as a consumer throwing, goods away, or a supermarket throwing, or donating product away. There's FAO reports that 25% of what we harvest is lost annually. And, I'm not disputing that you're not working in a value area. The U.S. is the worst for waste. I think U.S. you cited 40%. I think FAO is talking that number being about 25% of waste. But around the world, the waste issue is less important than what the loss issue is. So is there something that needs to be done in the loss area? And that isn't being addressed at all in this industry, like your comments on that.
I think in the developing markets, the food losses, getting the food from the farm to the consumer is where a lot of the waste takes place. And cold chain management is probably the right solution to that. So United Technologies is big in that area, and they put out a book about Food Foolish is the title of the book. It's a good read.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, that's absolutely right. But you're negating the issues around, other perishables that, the grain industry loses, the cereal industry loses about 8% annually because of losses, either because of spoilage or, toxic contamination or repurposing foods for that reason. Is there a market there for other, for other technology?
I think that just proves
Good
that there's a
question.
lot of opportunity in the whole supply chain. We're tackling each of our own specific areas, but definitely, I mean, yeah.
Michael, were you going to say something?
Well,
I heard a voice.
I'm obviously representing a retailer, but I do know that the food manufacturers associations, and that might be even further downstream from where your concerns come from, but they too are really taking a good look at the food, the waste that, they call it waste, whether it's lost or, or waste, but I know that they have taken a hard look at it too, and have open dialogue so that all of us are connected in some way. We may be more downstream, some of us are more downstream than others, but to really tackle this, we all have to be interconnected.
Other questions? Yeah.
What innovations have you seen the most impact so far, and what still needs to happen? What innovations would you like to see come to the market of food waste, if there's even a market yet?
I mean, I'd like to think that we're some of the largest, scalable first movers in some of our spaces. We have a scalable model that I think can significantly, in large quantities, reduce food waste at the farm level. As far as innovations, what's interesting is what could help us further is some of the technologies that some people have pitched already regarding, helping farms to measure how fast they can pick and that sort of thing, around proving even more with more concrete numbers that it's efficient to harvest number 2 product at the same time as number 1 product. I think some of the food safety technologies will be great partnerships for us, and also even some of the stuff with robotics, because labor shortages is an issue for getting growers to take this risk, as we've discussed. And it's interesting because it's sort of a chicken and an egg. We help solve that problem by bringing them additional revenue to be able to have more opportunities to pay their laborers more to keep them. But you've got to get over that hurdle, and I think in general it'll be great to see sort of some solutions to the labor issue as well, to work with this waste issue. So.
There's a company in the UK called Winnow that have developed an analytics platform that allow restaurants to evaluate what the dishes that they're serving up and how much waste is coming back, what's not eaten, what is eaten, how much is on there, which I believe, is leading to material changes in their bottom line, which is important. So there's lots of people working on different types of technologies that are going to apply to the entire food value chain. What's important is even minor tweaks. I was reading somewhere, I can't remember the exact figures, but something like 11% of food waste is created from supermarkets, is created by the people who are stacking the vegetables and the fruits on the shelf. If they drop them, if they do it in a way that is too rough, they lose 11% of the produce. So even minor tweaks like that can make a material difference to how much we're wasting. So there's 11% right there just from supermarkets. So.
Dana, Joni, anything else before we move?
Well, awareness is always, that's making our, we call them teammates. If they work for Schnucks, they're teammates. Other people might call them employees, but, having everybody see their role in this is really important. From an innovation side, I am always so encouraged. In fact, I visited with the Monsanto group at UC Davis last summer, and wherever we can get science and seed technology to create or to innovate products that do more of what we think is important, and that is give the shelf life to the customer, all along the way is that's the kind of innovation that I get excited about.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a question? Yeah. Yes.
Just curious if any of you can comment on the opportunity of taking like digester type technology as a way to deal with organic waste in municipalities. That seems to me a big sector of reducing landfill from taking out organic streams at the municipal level. And if that's another aspect of food waste that could be brought to bear at a very large scale.
Yeah, I can comment on that. Anaerobic digestion is a technology. Anaerobic means without oxygen. Our process is aerobic with oxygen. We can't really handle putrescent waste streams. So things like residential waste or restaurant waste are not a good fit for us. But they are a good fit for anaerobic digestion, which converts the food into methane, which is then can be compressed and used as fleet fuel or other things like that. So again, I think as the technologies develop, as the businesses develop, you see segmentation of the market and different initiatives attacking this problem in each of those individual segments, and in a way where it scales up over the next 10 years. And you'll see that, I think.
Question.
Others on this particular point? Otherwise, we'll take questions.
So on this point, so in Seattle, where I live, it's actually against the law to put food scraps into the waste stream. You are obligated to compost. Do you see that being more widely adopted in your business?
There's a law in California called AB 1826 that much the same, especially that kicked in for large generators as of April 1st. The problem is there's nowhere near enough capacity between the other technology, of course, is composting. If there's too much food waste in green waste compost, that it goes anaerobic and it putresces, and there's all kinds of problems. So that's there's some drawbacks with all of the available technologies, and which is why, although there's a law in California, it's really yet to be to kick in terms of volumes.
I would say that one of the challenges to almost everything is lack of awareness and lack of education. So not to say that, in your part of the world, I'm sure people are much more educated about what is and isn't acceptable. That would have to be, obviously drilled down across the country. I know when we even started our plastic bag recycling program so that we could, take the plastic, recycle it, make useful, durable products out of it, it just constant education to the consumer what can go in and what can't, because like you said, when you get the wrong things mixed in, it just takes one person to, create a contamination that makes it all useless. And so just again, the awareness and the education are going to be the challenges for tackling this product, this issue from end to end, in my opinion.
Yeah, question here.
Maybe for Christine. So what are the hurdles, if any, to expand that B2B cloud-based business also to Europe?
To Europe? Nothing, we plan to go there. I think, it's always about, within food, usually, making sure that almost a hub and spoke model with logistics where, that's how we plan on expanding similar to other food companies. So absolutely, as long as, we would find areas within Europe that made sense in terms of where the large producers are and the large food and beverage companies. Usually they're smart and they are close by so that it's not that big of a transportation distance, but it would be easily replicable with our process that we're creating in the US over there, and globally, so.
Europe has more pressing problems with the availability of landfill than we do in the US, so they're well ahead of the US in terms of recycling organics. Primarily, they've focused on anaerobic digestion as the technology of choice.
Other questions? Did you have one over here?
I wonder if labeling and the sort of use by and the expiration date, does that confound the use and the consumer and what's happening in that?
That is probably one of the biggest issues the food industry is working on, and it's requiring a task force, a lot of dialogue between the retailers and the food manufacturers. And I can understand that from a manufacturer side, the consumer is confused by the dates because it can be used by, sell by, best by, and what everyone is after is the best experience for the customer. So I think a lot of the food that a consumer would waste at home is driven by confusion over those dates. And so getting to a point where we can agree on either, and it's so complicated because the standards that might be in place that would work for a dairy product might not necessarily work for a packaged product or fresh versus what you'd get out of a prepared foods. And so because food safety is also very important, that's where we're talking about the difference between pure food safety and is this safe to eat versus is this just not going to be the best thing that you ever ate type of experience. And so we have to come together and get to a place where we really give the consumer better guidance on it. I know one of the things that the Food Marketing Institute did that I think a lot of consumers find very helpful, it's called Food Keeper. And it's not tied to any particular brand. So you might have a branded product put on their product, best by or used by, ours sometimes is sell by. And yet, there's a difference between the quality of the product, going strictly by those dates versus just the practical nature. So the Food Keeper would give just some general practical information on, okay, how long does, a pound of butter last once you purchase it, or milk once opened, how long? And then you have to factor in, well, does the consumer keep it out, on the breakfast table for 2 hours before they put the milk jug back in? So there's variables all along the way that make it so challenging.
We're just in closing, I just wanted to maybe end with, if there's a one-sentence sort of biggest learning not already discussed or touched upon for each of you in this work on the subject of food waste broadly, so not, not necessarily in your experience building up your companies, but on the issue, what's been the most surprising thing that you've come across so far? Maybe we'll start with you, Christine, just kind of quick sentence.
Interesting. I think just how much opportunity there is and the time is ripe for people wanting this. I was told I was going to have a lot of pushback and challenges, and I think it's just the timing is right for this kind of innovation, and scaling these
Yeah.
solutions.
I think the biggest surprise that we've had is how much value it generates to create a highly labile organic liquid fertilizer and get that into the root zone, and how much improved productivity in agriculture can be sparked by that.
From my end, I think the thing that surprises me most is how much opportunity there is that we're wasting. And, we're wasting food and we're wasting a lot of opportunity to run better stores, more efficient stores, more profitable stores, and still feed the community.
Yeah, same with me. The size of the opportunity and the size of the problem, I had no idea before I met Dan, and it really is astounding how we've let this get away from us. So it's time to change.
All right, on that uplifting note, I'll turn it back to you all. Thanks very much. Thanks to our panelists.